This one was interesting. From Jake G asked, which players deserve more recognition for the improvements they've made from last season to this season? For example, as a repenting Cody Martin hater, he's improved by leaps and bounds this year, but would never be considered for most improved player. Those guys deserve some love as well. So I tackled this in the sense that, like, I'm going to use Desmond Bane as just the delineation line where he is a sophomore. I'm not sure enough people are talking about him. I know Grizzlies fans are clamoring that he doesn't get enough attention. I've put him. He is like the line. He's in the most improved player conversation for me. And so it's fair to leave him out of this discussion. I hate to frame it as most improved because I do think with a lot of players, it's a matter of opportunity. So I was basically going through every team and just looking at players that have stood out this year, maybe one from each squad that have not received enough love this season, maybe are underappreciated, or they are the most improved player on the team. That feels like it could be its own podcast. So maybe we'll delve deeper into that. But if I were to blow through some of those names right now, and maybe I won't stop at every team or read through the list that I have from every team, I do think that let's try and go through all of them right here. I'm going to say DeLon Wright for Atlanta. That was a tough one, not an improvement, just someone who's underappreciated. I think Romeo Langford's given Boston some really good minutes this season. When you look over in Brooklyn, DeAndre Bembry, I don't know that he's improved, but he's played some highly important minutes for the Nets this season. In Charlotte, Cody Martin's probably the clear answer, but I would listen to Jalen McDaniels' responses there as well. On the Bulls, Javonte Green, without question. On the Cavs, there's probably a number of candidates, but I ultimately do think when you look at their top three players in Garland, Allen, and Mobley, those guys all get enough attention. I even think that there's been enough homage paid to, Kevin Love's playing a little better this season and seems happy, and Ricky Rubio might be one of the best backup point guards in the NBA. I'm inclined to go with Isaac Okoro because I don't think people realize how much he's improved or is playing well on offense right now. I'm actually going to settle on Cedi Osman, who plays with the brazen euphoria of someone who is peaking on just the right amount of Molly. That's how I could best describe the Cedi Osman offensive experience. In Dallas, come on, we know it's our guy, Frank Ntilikina. Jalen Brunson's too mainstream for this case. He is, so far, been their best free agent addition. I know the bar isn't super low there. Denver, is it Bones Highland? That was someone. I think it could also be Aaron Gordon. It's really probably just Jeff Green. Their backup big man situation is not on him. He's also not a backup at this point, but he's been so important. Just the way he's defending, and then also he's been shooting threes fairly well. I don't want to sound like an asshole for this. I don't really have one for the Pistons. It's probably Saban Lee, or I still just believe in Killian Hayes long term. I just watch someone who, even when he's making the wrong decisions, even when he's not hitting shots, it just feels like there's a cadence there that is going to turn into something. Maybe if his feel improves, and there are even times where it just looks like his feel is through the roof. The Warriors, everyone there probably just gets enough attention. Think of Gary Payton II, Juan Toscano Anderson, even. I'm actually going to go with, JTA is just, a siren song of mine, but I'm not sure that we appreciate like the season Otto Porter Jr. has had for the Dubs, especially defensively. They've effectively been using him as a big, and he pitched in their second game against the Suns, I believe. I hope I'm not misremembering, where he had some good plays when it came to limiting DeAndre Ayton there. In Houston, you can throw Eric Gordon in here and I'll listen, because I've seen trades for Eric Gordon where people think that Houston just wants to get off his salary. I think it takes a first round pick to get Eric Gordon at this point. That's how good he's actually been. Aside from him, Garrison Matthews, without question, not shooting as well over the past few games, I believe, but he never should have been on a two-way contract. Probably needs a new agent at this point. Looking at the contract he did sign. The Pacers, this is easy. It's O'Shea Brissett. I love him. If you're going to watch a Pacers game, just zero in on O'Shea Brissett and watch what he does off the ball defensively, how much he works even when he's on the ball, and then just watch him on offense. There's some stuff he can do on the ball, and he's hit some threes this year, but like, he's a player that makes you want to watch what's happening away from the action, I think is the best way that I can describe him. For the Los Angeles Clippers, I still think people don't realize how important Nick Batum is to them, but Luke Kennard is quietly having an exceptional shooting season. We have a question about him in a short minute. I am blowing through these. I hope I'm not going too fast for anyone. God bless anyone who's listening to me on 1.5 or like I do, 2 times speed. The Lakers, the trolling answer would just be, I don't know that there's anyone really here. And I think it's probably accurate. I believe that every Stars season, when you look at Russ and LeBron and Davis, the degree to which they've just been invalidated or criticized is probably over the top, because they've quietly played like Russ has played better of late. LeBron's decline is, he's not getting to the rim as much. He's not the same player. He's also about to turn 37. Come on. And then Anthony Davis has been there. Some concerns there. There've just been some weird moments on defense where he gets pushed around. His offensive shot profile to me would still not be ideal. He's getting to the rim enough, but still too reliant on that mid range, not hitting it at a high enough clip to me to necessarily justify that. If I was really looking for an underrated or a most improved player on this team, I don't like, you probably just have to go with Austin Reeves because he's had some big moments. There was Carmelo Anthony's hot shooting to start the year. You could even argue Malik Monk, but I'm seriously not trying to crap all over the Lakers here. It's just they have so many veterans, so many known commodities that are, I think, playing up to snuff, if not worse. Talon Horton-Tucker would be the one that's played worse, just looking at him and on offense. Memphis, it cannot be Desmond Bane, please. I just want to reiterate that. And so in the absence of Desmond Bane, I think we really need to go with probably Tyus Jones. Has played a fairly big role for, not improved for sure, but definitely looking at underrated. You want a rock solid, steady backup point guard who's going to bust his ass on defense. That would be Tyus Jones. He was very important to Memphis surviving that stretch without Ja, as was also DeAnthony Melton, if you want to throw him in there. If you do want to go higher profile, though, I will definitely listen to the Desmond Bane case. The Heat, oh my God, they have too many candidates, which is not something that I would have predicted. I think I'm going to settle in with Caleb Martin. The Martin twins are having a moment on separate teams this season. I think a lot with him. He's not really doing stuff that he didn't do in Charlotte previously, where like he can do all different kinds of things on defense and he has skills that translate all over the offensive end. It's just that his role was sort of augmented or expanded during the Heat's rash of not having guys available. If it's not him, I think it's between Max Strus or Gabe Vincent. I might lean Strus, but I'm actually not sure there. In Milwaukee, Grayson Allen, not sure enough people are necessarily talking about him and the job that he has done this season. He's been a lights out shooter for them. I'm going to be interested once they have Dante DiVincenzo available to see if his minutes are impacted at all. I would probably think that we're just seeing less of a Jordan Nwala, and then Rodney Hood is just a complete afterthought at that point. Maybe Wesley Matthews is even the one. He's on the 10-day contract as of right now. Even George Hill could see his minutes drop. So I don't think Grayson Allen's role is what I'm getting at is going to be diminished by the return of Dante DiVincenzo. In Minnesota, I think there are people that would pick D'Angelo Russell because he's been a very good connective tissue on offense for the Timberwolves this year. And I'll totally listen to that. It's got to be Jared Vanderbilt, though, there. And hey, that'll please anyone who said that we didn't watch Jared Vanderbilt from the last podcast. His defense is just absurd. We have a question about the switchiest bigs in the league, and he is there. His energy is through the roof. He can crash the glass super hard. I do worry about how he would hold up against just larger, stronger bigs when you're looking at raw defense or needing to necessarily box them out on the defensive glass, where the Wolves have struggled at times this season. But he's just been an absolute joy to watch. In New Orleans, I think it's probably Josh Hart this year. Oh, no, it's Herbert Jones. I don't know why I just don't even I'm looking at, if anyone's watching me on camera, I'm looking at my second screen and I didn't even have Herbert Jones on there. It's him. He is just like a defensive monster. And if he hits his threes at a league average clip moving forward, this becomes just like not just a scalable player, but an incredibly valuable one who can play all sorts of different positions on both offense and defense. For the Knicks, I struggled with this one. It's actually currently left blank with question marks because I was going to need to decide in real time. It's got to be Alec Burks. Just had some really big moments for them. I think it speaks to they promoted him to the starting lineup in the first place when they were looking to make a change. I do think some people might want to go with Quentin Grimes or Miles McBride just because they've shown flashes, but neither of them have played enough this season. So I think by far it's Alec Burks. What he can do on, aside from stretch the floor on offense, like there are things that he can do on the ball where it does feel like he operates as Caitlin Cooper called this a separatist when she was talking about Karis LeVert. I think that's a perfect way to describe Alec Burks at points, but he can really get you a bucket, including in tight situations. He's been huge for them. Not as much this year in fourth quarters, but it was a big deal for them last year in fourth quarters. And looking at his overall performance, that clearly just wasn't a fluke. OKC, this one is Kendrick Williams. I was wondering if he was too high profile. He's not. He can give you some buckets within the flow of the offense. He is going to space the floor, and he can defend like four positions at this point. Is he like a big? Is he a wing? He just blurs that line in the most amazing way possible. For the Magic, I will say it has to be Franz Wagner. So I don't think we're talking about him enough relative to the rest of the rookies. When you look at Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, even Chris Duarte, or Alperen Sengun at this point feels like he gets more attention. You could go with Wendell Carter Jr. here too. Not shooting as well from 3-point range as he was at the beginning of the year, but he just looks more confident. Still has the same sort of portability on defense, but he's making better decisions and more decisive decisions in real time, whether he's passing or attacking. Mo Bamba's had some moments this year, but I ultimately think it's Wagner because his game is just more expansive than at least I realized coming into the league. He hasn't been as big of a liability on defense, even when he's been on sort of wings. And it's not just this outside in game for him. He has a real FU to when he's putting the ball on the floor and actually getting inside. So he's been a joy to watch. Something to also monitor, Gary Harris has been playing better on offense lately. So don't know if he's a trade candidate on his contract. If he for some reason hits the buyout market, there's a team that could potentially sort of hit the lottery there. The Philadelphia 76ers, it's probably George Niang, hasn't had like the most pristine availability, but he hasn't tapered off the way that Furkan Korkmaz has this season. And so he's been really big as sort of this fringe big for Philadelphia in second unit minutes. And that's just been a key to how Philly was treading water when they were dealing with all those injuries and absences. And now they've sort of like fallen off the cliff a bit, but I think it's Niang for me. Seth Curry's just he's in the most improved player conversation at this point. Phoenix, it is Jalen Smith. Is it JaVale McGee? It's not. I mean, look, he's been great for them. Cam Johnson, I don't know if we fully appreciate him enough. Make or miss, his release is porn. That's probably the best way that I could encapsulate it. There are so many things that he can even do on offense. And I think someone made this point. I don't know if it was the folks over the Timeline podcast or just someone I was reading. While Mikal Bridges might have more of an opportunity to attack closeouts, if you need someone to do more directional stuff on offense in the half court with the ball in his hands, as my Slack goes off there, making an appearance, Bleacher Report Slack, Cam Johnson's probably a little bit better suited to do that. I still trust Mikal Bridges as more of that passer out of those situations. And I'm just going to like Mikal Bridges overall. I also think that he has graduated, Mikal Bridges, that is, from this discussion. So that is a testament to him. It's also a testament probably to DeAndre Ayton at this point, because he could have qualified for a conversation like this in the past. Moving on to Portland this season, Anthony Simons has had a good year. I don't know if we're talking enough about Norman Powell, but the answer is Nasir Little. We talked about him at length with Terrebonne Biggs on the Portland Trail Blazers pod. He's just been slack going off again. Need to get rid of it somehow. He's been great. Just a high energy player, can do things on defense, will hit the glass hard, will run the floor, can be really physical when he's around the basket. I like watching Nasir Little, probably one of my favorite Blazers to just watch from an entertainment value this year. Larry Nance Jr. still deserves an honorable mention in these discussions, though. That's for absolute damn sure. That would bring us to the Sacramento Kings. This is a tough one. I still feel like we're too low on De'Aaron Fox's long-term nationally, but it can't be him. It's still Richaun Holmes. Just his little push shot. I think he's better on defense if you need sort of I don't want to say basic, but a good rim protector who is not going to be completely looking like Bambi on ice if he's pulled outside of the paint. It's just still him. You look at what he could do is running the floor, what he can even do on the glass, even though he's not necessarily the burliest big. It's Richaun Holmes. How do we not appreciate him enough? I think he just deserves more attention, and I want the Kings to be good because I love Richaun Holmes. That is the sole reason I want the Kings to be good. In San Antonio, it's still Devin Vassell, is it not? He's hit pull-up jumpers this year. You look at his hustle on defense. He can move really well away from the ball too on offense. I'm curious to see sort of where his ceiling or where his peak ends up as an offensive player more so. I don't think he's going to be running these pick and rolls as sort of, a glorified Derek White off of DeJounte Murray in those cases, but I don't necessarily think this is someone who just needs to be solely off it. Maybe there's even some Desmond Bane like potential there when it comes to operating with the ball in your hands. You will need to improve his playmaking though to make that type of a jump. Toronto, it's Gary Trent Jr. for me. I had circled Scotty Barnes, Yuta Watanabe. That's a really deep cut. That's just someone, he's one of the most positionless players in the NBA, and he is going to be sound at nearly everything he does. So I'm curious to see if there might be a team that wants to trade for him. This is the final year of his deal, and he's super cheap. Maybe Toronto doesn't want to give him up. But it's been Gary Trent Jr. He's quietly, I feel like outside of Toronto, when you're looking at the Raptors, are we talking about Gary Trent Jr.'s defense enough? And a lot's made of, he can space the floor. There are things that he can do with the ball in his hands too that put pressure on defenses. Not super high volume at the rim, but even if he's pulling up, there's just more of a threat level there than there needed to be in Portland. Let's frame it that way. In Utah, it is still Royce O'Neal. If you want to go with the Hassan Whiteside resurgence or just Rudy Gay giving them some solid minutes, even Bojan Bogdanovic, because, I guess because of his contract is viewed as this detriment, but he's one of the leaders in points per touch at this point. But looking at the defensive workload, Royce O'Neal shoulders it's mission critical to what the Jazz do. And then he's just really this eminently universal fit on the offensive end. And he can, if he wants to drive and kick, or you just need him to hit threes, like he's going to do it. They've even used him as a spot ball handler in instances. That doesn't always work out as well, but it's something that he can do. In Washington, that is another team I left blank. I've enjoyed Deni Avdija, but I was flirting with putting a Kuzma or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope here because we talk about the Wizards' struggles this season. And I think a lot of people sort of focus on, did they make maybe they're not focusing on it, but it's the guard play that worries me in Washington, specifically. Dinwiddie's been bad. Beal's not been up to his level of, all NBA type play. And I think that KCP and Kuzma have just both been rather solid, but it's Deni Avdija for me. He's a long way to go on offense, but I never, and this is the caveat being someone who doesn't dive too deep into college basketball until we get to around the draft. I was surprised that he is able to hold his own defensively like this and is so active there. And I'm curious if he's just can be even heavier of a secondary playmaker as we fast forward into the future. But I wouldn't quibble if someone wants to just, shout out at KCP or Kyle Kuzma, because it's like, no, they're not part of the issue. They've been, KCP shooting the ball well. Kuzma's been okay defensively. If you want to go with Montrezl Harrell, I just think he was an absolute, terror on the offensive end to begin the season. That's pretty much more well known. That was a long ass question. Hopefully you stuck with me while blowing through that.